I mean, look, the anti-labor bias has always been in the newspapers, no matter what they pretend to be. I mean, in every city, as a rule, there'd be one paper that perhaps would be a little bit liberal, like the Leader, my paper in Pittsburgh, where I started. That's why I started on it, because it's going to be a liberal paper. There's a labor paper. Labor unions did get notices. We had a labor editor, you see. But the gang, the bosses, the banks really owned the paper, you see. Now, actually, how I got started with, after the Spanish War, a magazine called Ken got started, then one called Friday. This was all in which we were all looking for somewhere to tell the truth, or the facts, if you don't like the word truth. We couldn't. So that, I said, how did I start my paper? I figured out there was only one way to start. We happened to know a man who was connected with some union. And we said, look, we're going to start this paper. We're going to publish all the news that's suppressed. A large part of it is suppressed news. A large part of it concerns labor. Now, we'll get you a sample dummy, and we're going to make a low price, say 25 cents for 12 issues, sample issues. And he went out to the labor unions of New York City. And the day we started, in fact, the first issue of May 1940, we had 6,000 subscribers. Before we were started, all were union men. Now, eventually, we were starting towards 1 million. I had a maximum of 176,000 subscribers. And I would have gotten 1 million if it wasn't for the red baiting. People wrote in saying, if you can mail it in a plain envelope, so no one will know what I'm getting, I'd like to get your magazine, something like that.
George, tick off a few of the things that you tried to expose in your weekly, in fact, that the establishment press were ignoring. For instance,
look, we found out that the Federal Trade Commission is and always has been a sort of the watchdog for the health and welfare of the American people. Drugs, tobacco, even car financing. The Federal Trade Commission, we found out, issues more than 365 what we generally call fraud orders a year. They issue stipulations, they issue, anyway, they even have trials and court decisions, whatever it is, you see. Orders, whatever it is. Well, at that time, the press was so corrupt, you might say. I mean, I'm talking of a period of 50, 60 years, that there was no mention of these things. There was no mention when a dollar a bottle thing to cure consumption cure would be put on the market. Pure frauds. But there were big frauds done by whom? By Ford, General Motors, Chrysler? Will you believe it? Well, look, this is a simple little matter. They have each of the big dealers has a financing department. You can buy a $3,000 car, which was big money in those days, see? Financing it for 3 years for 6%. Fair enough, right? This is what the fraud order says. During the year, you paid $180 the first year, 6% on $3,000. In the second year, you have paid off $1,000. You only owe $2,000. But the financing department of General Motors or CIT, which was Ford's or the other, would say $180 the second year. The third year, you only owe $1,000. But you're paying $180, that's 18% interest. So it averages out to 12% interest. So the fraud order by the FTC addressed to Ford, General Motors, I don't know if I may have it in here, a photostat of it. And all the rest says you cannot claim 6% under these circumstances. It's 6% on the balance due and not on the original price of the car. And do you know millions of people paid it and still thought they were paying only 6% for financing their car?
Another issue you took up, certainly ahead of your time, certainly ahead of the Surgeon General's report in 1964,
yes.
was smoking. What did in fact do about smoking?
Look, as I always say,